All right, YouTube. Le Pen over in France, of course, a candidate there for the highest office, has refused to put on a headscarf. And the French media, apparently, some elements thereof, didn't like this fact. She compared herself, actually, and this is correct, to Michelle Obama. Of course, you remember she went over to Saudi Arabia. She didn't wear a headscarf. She said, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm the first lady. What the fuck do I care about your customs? This is a state visit. And people were criticizing her, apparently saying, oh, yeah, but this is a religious visit. So, in other words, if Le Pen were to go visit a convent or something like that, you would expect her to dress up as a nun. If she were to visit a bunch of Jewish rabbis, you would expect her to wear some sort of black robe for their procession. It just doesn't make any sense. People in a free nation should not be compelled under any circumstances to wear any form of religious garb regardless of the circumstances. It doesn't make any sense to try to compel them to do so. The fact is that if she were refusing to wear some sort of religious attire, a cross or whatever, for a mainstream religious order that is considered Western or Westernized, Christianity, of course, it comes from the Middle East, but it's been Europeanized over time. If she refused to do that, a lot of the secular individuals in France would be applauding her. But many of these same individuals take one look at this, where she's saying, oh, I want to meet with this Lebanese cleric, apparently. But I'm not going to wear a headscarf, so I'm just going to cancel this because they can't get over them fuck themselves. Then the same people that should be applauding her for standing up for women's rights and the rights of secularity and for all free civilized people in the Western world suddenly flip shit and act like it's some horrible thing that she's done. Oh, it's politically incorrect, or it's ethnocentrism, or oh, it's wrong in a cultural manner. You're being disrespectful to this wonderful cleric. Why should she bow down before some foreign god that she doesn't believe in? You're expecting her to literally show a sign of submission to a deity she happens not to believe is real. In France, no less. This is something you would expect to be a problem in a much more religious nation, not France, part of Western Europe. Be a little bit like highly atheistic Norway. They're like, oh yeah, we're going to have a Muslim procession. All civilians shall wear the burqa while it goes on out of respect for Islam or something like that. It's no different. Now, Le Pen is called for an extension, of course, on the burqa ban that's in place in France. I think that's a good idea. The concept of a religious order forcing its adherents simply because they happen to be female into wearing certain types of clothing is generally, in a cultural and social sense, considered unacceptable in the Western world, in the advanced world, in the more intellectual parts of the world. I think you'll find that it is a weak culture indeed that tolerates that happening. Nigel Farage got roasted on this topic too, of course, some time ago. He was appearing there. He was actually alongside Sadiq Khan, no less, among others. I think that that one idiot British comedian, so-called, was there. I can't even remember his name because I haven't seen anything about him in a couple years since I saw that video anyway. He was there. And they were basically roasting him. Oh, well, you're proposing that we ban this religious attire and so forth. He's like, no, it's just it doesn't make any sense. Like, you're going to have people in a full burqa. You can't ask them to remove it because it's part of their religious tradition. Well, how do they ID themselves? It boils down, in his case, to a pragmatic argument. Here it boils down to an ideological argument. She doesn't want to submit to Allah. And I don't fucking blame her, and I can respect her more for this. The people of France need to get real damn serious about whether they're going to preserve France or not, whether they care about French culture. But think of this, for all those fence-sitters in France, before you cast your vote for some globalist, or for this Fillon fellow, who is basically a male Le Pen, minus the charisma, I suppose, and has no chance. Think about it this way. If you believe in the tolerance and virtues of French culture, you won't be able to preserve those things that you hold so dear if French culture itself devolves into chaos. It is rapidly doing so. Now, I have hope for France because it seems like a very large proportion of the population there has gotten real fucking tired with the way that things are operating. Real fucking tired with the European Union, with globalism, with this multicultural crap, because multiculturalism can't work. You can have all sorts of foreigners living in your country as long as they assimilate. You can. It's not a problem. But when they stop assimilating, when they're asking the native host culture to assimilate to their demands, as people in the French press are apparently asking of someone who might end up leading France, oh, you just put on the veil, yeah, bow down to Islam. You know, the fact that your ancestors spent centuries fighting Islam to keep it from dominating this part of the world, just fucking forget about that. There's no, nobility is wrong, it's evil, lineage is wrong, cultural tradition should be completely destroyed. Let's just let everybody fucking into the country and say to hell with it. That's what I think that these people are actually intoning here. This is crazy crap. You couldn't have even told people that this would happen like back in the 90s. We're not even talking about, oh, you have to go back a century when people were brave and they had, you know, those big thick mustaches and shot each other in the trenches. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, you know, a couple decades ago. Nobody could have envisioned that this would be a mainstream sort of political movement. And we need to stop it damn quick. This is an aberration in human history. To people being raised up right now, they're looking around, they're naturally going to think, oh yeah, this is just the way that things work. It's modern, it's good, it's the way that civilized modern humans happen to operate. And all those people in the past, like even as late as the 1990s, were uncivilized and not tolerant enough and so forth. Screw that. I can remember a time, young as I may be, that it wasn't that way. Nobody talked of it, nobody ever had any inkling that it was a good idea to have unassimilated groups in one's nation. It wouldn't make any sense. It still doesn't make any sense. They've managed to hoodwink people into thinking it makes sense by making a bunch of lame-ass or moral arguments that have nothing to do with the situation. Just like the one bad apple spoils the whole barrel thing. If you like the refugees, if you care about the refugees, you want to vet them properly, slow down the flow enough so that you can make sure abusive individuals do not enter your nation alongside them. They will end up in the same community. They will abuse that same population, and pretty soon all the good refugees that you cared about will be enslaved to ISIS or something like that. To people saying, oh, sounds like a conspiracy, it could never happen. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. People probably thought it couldn't happen in Syria because Bashar al-Assad was a secular dictator. It's happening there as the Western world unwisely gets involved. I don't blame her for not wanting to bow down and submit before someone who doesn't even represent a state, represents a religious order. That's all in one parcel of that religious order. When you're looking at Islam, you're not looking at a homogeneous whole. People, it's like with these stupid religious statistics. They break Catholics, Protestants, and the Orthodoxy apart for the purposes of differentiating them. And yet when it comes to Islam, it's just Islam. There's no differentiation of Sunni and Shia. There's no Alawite. There's no anything else included. It's just Islam, so they can make it look more dominant than it really is. Then they don't even want to talk about the fact that these same groups within supposedly the same religious order have been slaughtering each other for centuries. They don't want to talk about it because it might be bad for business, I suppose, under globalism. So I have great respect for Le Pen. She did the right thing. And these people trying to crucify her for not throwing a headscarf on, what are you talking about? It's a French tradition to wear a headscarf all day. What if she were visiting the nunnery? Would you be upset if she didn't wear a headscarf then? No, you'd probably think it was a great thing. Say, oh, yeah, this unabashed tyranny of the evil Christian order trying to suppress women. Praise Le Pen for standing up against this sort of religious theocracy and so forth. But because it happens to be a Lebanese cleric who practices a form of Islam, all of a sudden these same people are trying to crucify her. That's retarded. I hope the people of France elect Le Pen. Maybe their nation will begin to improve. France has a wonderful culture. Part of that culture, it's like with Scandinavia, it's a little bit too tolerant and open, and so it gets abused by people who want to take advantage of that same fact of their culture. Therein lies the problem. That's why Sweden has such difficulties. It shouldn't be that way. The people of France have a right to be left alone and not abused by outsiders for no reason. But apparently people like Hollande, Marxist as he is, don't recognize that fact. Hollande doesn't care about French culture. He says, essentially, he's taking up a corporatist line almost. He's like, oh, I got mine. I've got my gated community and my caviar. I don't care what happens to the little people of France. Fuck that shit. Let him drown in Islamofascism for all Hollande cares, I suppose. That's about all. Peace out.